I just whispered in the ears of the moderator that he challenged and intrigued me. But before, I would like to tell you that, yes, President Juncker entrusted me this heavy task. But believe me, when I was accepting, I could never imagine what was expecting me. Because at that time, 2 years ago, the situation was totally different. But we are not there anymore. Let me start by telling you that I was more than happy during these 2 years to meet again and cooperate so closely with Thomas de Maizière. He's not only a great German politician, he's one of the greatest European leaders, and his conviction, his attachment to Europe, his German way of thinking as a strategist contributed in a considerable way in order today Europe to be proud to say that we have a policy on migration and security. Yes, we have to do more in the future, and I will explain to you what we are trying to do, where we succeeded, and where we have to do more. I would like also to express my thanks for having given to me this opportunity to be in this Congress, to celebrate with you the jubilee of this very important institution. Dear friends, we find ourselves today at a very critical moment in history, where different global developments are threatening Europe's unity and cohesion. Security and migration are among the foremost concerns of our citizens. And while both issues are different and should be approached in a different way, they have two things in common. They are both transnational in character and affect all of us regardless of borders. And secondly, both issues are prime targets for populist rhetoric and exploitation. This is for me the main threat for the future of Europe, this dangerous mix of populism and nationalism. This meant that even though migration and terrorism seem to put into question the cohesion of the European Union, they can only be tackled through a joint European approach. An approach which is true to our founding European values, to international law, and to our duty towards our citizens. And the European citizens know it. They expect concrete responses, and they want more common European responses to these issues. European citizens they demand to feel secure. We are surrounded by conflicts which result in massive population displacements. While staying true to our fundamental values of human rights, democracy, dignity, we have a duty to also guarantee the security of our citizens. Our openness and security must go hand in hand. Starting from our external borders, in the globalized, digitized, and volatile neighborhood we inhabit, they are our first line of security, but also the enabler of mobility. This mobility is significant for our societies and our economies. Mobility will only increase, but it cannot come at the expense of our security. We need to have better knowledge of who crosses our borders, as Thomas said before, and if they pose a threat once they are on EU territory. At the same time, we want to ensure that those people who have a right to travel, a right to be here, and a right to protection are not hindered to enter the European Union. We are not creating a fortress Europe. Europe will always welcome people to its shores. But in order for our internal borders to remain open, and in order for people to travel freely across the Schengen area, our external border management needs to improve. It is the only way to safeguard Schengen, the greatest achievement of our times, and the free movement to which Europeans are so attached. One of the milestones of last year has been the creation of the European Borders and Coast Guard. With the deployment of border guards and experts, it is already supporting Greek and Italian authorities continuously. All migrants and refugees arriving there are now systematically registered and fingerprinted, something that was not the case 2 years ago. Because at that time, Europe was taken by surprise, and no member state was prepared to address this issue. We now have a rapid reaction pool of 1,500 border guards that can be deployed in 5 days in any member state if there is sudden pressure building on the external border. Beyond the border guards on the ground, better border management is also about better information. Systematic checks will now be carried out for all those who cross our external borders, whether they are EU or foreign nationals. This will make it easier to detect terrorist suspects and returning foreign terrorist fighters. Our information systems need to improve in this context. This is why, for example, we propose to reform the Schengen information system in December so that no critical information is lost on potential terrorist suspects or irregular migrants crossing our borders. We have also proposed an entry-exit system for our external borders to reinforce border check procedures for non-EU nationals traveling to the European Union. A new European travel information and authorization system will allow us to have an additional security and irregular migration check for non-EU travelers coming here visa-free. Finally, we are rapidly implementing our European Passengers Name Record Framework to further help the identification of potential threats to the Union. If Thomas and myself could tell you how many difficulties we had been confronted with in order to do it, you wouldn't believe it. But we are here to deliver, and this is what we do. So I don't agree with the previous remarks. No, we have made great progress. Maybe you push us to do more. This I accept not as a challenge, but as a duty. But as I said, we are not there where we were 2 years ago. Of course, having all these systems in place at our borders will only bring added value if the information they contain is connected and combined, if the systems talk to each other. And allow me to say, systems do not talk to each other. I have repeatedly said that what I have found out during the last 2.5 years is that there is still lack of trust between member states, between intelligence and security services, sometimes within the same country, the same state. So, our information management at the moment is too complex and fragmented. Key information is not shared. There are leads which are not followed. Our systems have blind spots because they were created as silos. This brings me to what happened here in Berlin in December. The city has been hit hard at a moment when innocent Berliners were preparing for the Christmas holidays. Berlin, Paris, Brussels, Nice. Over the past 2 years, Europe has been hit hard by brutal terrorist attacks. The police and law enforcement authorities are in the front line here, across the entire European Union. I want to pay tribute to all the colleagues in uniform for their dedication, commitment, and professionalism. What is also crucial here is that the suspect traveled across several EU countries to get to Milan before being detected. What this shows, once again, is that dealing with terrorism together is not only necessary, it is inevitable. Terrorists do not know borders, and neither should our response. We have a shared responsibility towards our citizens to create an effective and genuine security union. We must make sure that the structures for cooperation are as effective as possible. And as I said before, trust is an essential element here. In a genuine security union, a police officer in one member state should share relevant information with colleagues over the border, as with fellow officers in his own country. This means that he also has to introduce the data in the relevant EU systems. To improve the situation at a European level, we need to urgently address gaps, fragmentation, and structural limitations of our information exchange in Europe. We made progress in detecting and preventing terrorist movements. We are also progressing in our fight to deprive terrorists of the means to commit attacks. I am pleased that last week there was an agreement for EU legislation on combating terrorism in the European Parliament, 1 year after the deadly attacks in Paris. It will criminalize terrorist travel, terrorist financing, and all forms of facilitation. We also introduced rules on firearms, and we are tightening our implementation of rules on explosives precursors. But terrorism is not only a European phenomenon. Our cooperation and information exchange with key third countries is essential. 2 weeks ago, I was in the United States to meet our new counterparts, to pass strong messages on the need for the transatlantic cooperation, not only to continue, but to be strengthened further. The fight against terrorism is not one Europe can fight without the United States. We need the United States working with us to address this threat, which is common for both of us. And I was encouraged to see that our American friends still see eye to eye with us on this challenge. We, of course, also need to cooperate closer to home. For example, many illegally trafficked weapons come from neighboring regions, like the Western Balkans, which also have their own problems with radical extremism. Again, cooperation, trust, and joint actions are essential. The main responsibility for national security will always lie with the member states, but Europe is needed here again to help addressing threats that are clearly transnational. We need to move towards the idea of protecting our collective security, because the security of one member state is the security of all member states and the Union as a whole. This is precisely why, within Europol, 1 year ago we launched the European Counter-Terrorism Center. Europol is not what you knew before. Its role has been upgraded, its mandate is even stronger, and it has been funded in order to better execute its duties. It has already demonstrated its operational added value by providing immediate support to member states hit by major terrorist attacks. The Center is there to help us. The more we use it, the more information we share with it, the more experts we send to it, the more useful it will be against terrorism. Beyond that, we must be proactive in fighting terrorism and reinforce our efforts to address radicalization. We have to understand why some of our citizens are becoming radicalized, and how can we prevent this from happening in the future. Our practitioners in the Radicalization Awareness Network on the ground daily with communities against this phenomenon, they do their best. Beyond the community level, the Internet is our most critical battleground, especially when it comes to our youth, but also people that arrive in Europe and become radicalized here on European soil. We have seen also those cases recently. Our work with major internet companies in the EU Internet Forum focuses precisely on this: removing terrorist propaganda from the Internet permanently and strengthening positive counter messages. Next month, I will travel to the United States, California, to meet the Internet companies again to ensure that we continue delivering concrete results in this area. Beyond the Internet, it is crucial that our understanding of security is not constrained by artificial distinctions between internal and external. Our security is a continuum. Threats in our neighborhood materialize at our front door. Our efforts, therefore, cannot be limited within the European Union's borders. Strengthening our relations with partner countries in the area of counterterrorism is a sine qua non. This is why we have upgraded security and counterterrorism cooperation with partner countries in the Western Balkans and around the Mediterranean, such as Tunisia, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and Turkey. With the support of security and counter-terrorism experts deployed in our EU delegations in Ankara, Beirut, Tunis, and Sarajevo, we are developing concrete cooperation projects. Turning to the sensitive issue of the infiltration of migratory flows by terrorists. Let me be clear. Refugees arriving on European soil looking for protection are precisely fleeing terrorism back home. The European Union will therefore never be, as I said before, a fortress Europe. We must continue to live up to and deliver on our fundamental traditions of solidarity, responsibility, and openness. However, this openness cannot come at the expense of our security, and we have to act against those who abuse the system. This is why we have taken the necessary measures to make sure that our openness is not abused. The European Borders and Coast Guard, as well as Europol, are doing security checks in the hotspots in Italy and Greece. But it is also the responsibility of each police officer to introduce data and biometrics in our common information systems and to consult the systems when needed. Those migrants who have no right to stay in the European Union have to be returned as quickly as possible to their country of origin. We will soon come forward with new initiatives in this area to ensure the returns function properly. Ladies and gentlemen, we will continue to work with our member states and our agencies to forge effective European responses to the threats we are facing. I encourage our member states to facilitate information exchange related to terrorism or other serious cross-border security threats. I am convinced that through cooperation we can achieve our aims, which are to sustain and strengthen both our mobility and our security. Finally, allow me to express again my deep and sincere appreciation for the work that police and security forces across the European Union perform on a daily basis, sometimes under very difficult circumstances, in order to guarantee the security of the citizens of the European Union. This would not be possible without their professionalism, their commitment and self-sacrifice. And I want to make clear that the Commission is well aware of the tremendous burden put on your shoulders. I would also like to thank and commend Germany, which has played, as I said in the beginning, a leading role. And again, I would like to express my thanks to my good friend and German colleague, Thomas de Maizière. He has been and he is one of the architects of the European policy, both on security and migration. I am grateful to him. As I said in the beginning, we find ourselves today at a turning point where we not only need to strengthen our fight against terrorism, but also reinforce our defenses and our resilience as a union. And this is the task of all of us at all levels. Thanks again for your invitation. I was more than happy to be here, not only as a commissioner, not only as a citizen of Europe, but also as a son of a policeman. Thank you.